that no matter what happens, life will still be fine. You can send any questions that you have in the live YouTube chat. So we'll be taking questions towards the end. And I believe the session will also be recorded so that you can look at later. So some introductions in the beginning. My name is Nupur. I graduated class of 2011. I was in civil. I therefore did not graduate through a recession. And I joined McKinsey straight out of college. And now I work on my own startup based in the lovely city of Amsterdam, which is my virtual background right now, but not my view from my window. Do you guys all want to introduce yourselves?
Sure. I'll go next. Hey guys, my name is Sagar. I graduated in 2009, right in the middle of the recession. I am an electrical engineer from IITB. My first job out of campus was at Sony in Japan. And I guess we'll talk about how I landed that. After spending about 4 years at Sony, I did my MBA from the Wharton School, and then I started working at Amazon in 2015. And now I work as a principal program manager at Amazon and Seattle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Apeksha. I was also a part of class of 2009. I was in Meta, and after graduation, I worked with ZS Associates in Pune. Later, I did my MBA and joined BCG. And right now, I work with BCG as a principal in the Singapore office.
Hi, I'm Kriti, also from 2009 batch. I was in chemical engineering. I went to do my PhD straight after BTech in IIT. So I went to UT Austin in US to do PhD. And then after those 4 or 5 years, I joined Freescale Semiconductors as an APC engineer. And then I just moved to Amazon last year as a software engineer.
Hi everyone, Tanmay here. I also graduated in the 2009 batch. I was also in chemical engineering. Straight out of college, I joined GAIL India Limited, which is a public sector core company. I was there for almost 5 years, after which I did my MBA from ISB. Then I was with Accenture Strategy for another 5 years. And right now, again, because of the recession, I am also semi-unemployed for the last few months. And right now I've moved to Canada. And that's about me. We'll discuss more about how I got my first job and my current state in times to come. Yeah.
Hi, this is Anshu. I'm a MTech Computer Science from 2009 batch. I started with Qualcomm, then moved to Amazon after a couple of years, and then spent like 7 years at Amazon, and right now working for Google Cloud for last 2 or so years in New York City.
Yeah, I can go next. So I'm the only one who's not a part of the class of 2009. I graduated in 2016 with a bachelor's in electrical engineering. And after that, I worked as a software engineer at Samsung Bangalore for a couple of years before I moved to the USA for a master's in computer science. And currently I'm in Atlanta working remotely for Amazon. I'm a machine learning engineer in the Alexa AI team in Seattle. And I had to suffer because of the pandemic. And I'll be talking about my job hunting experience in this situation soon.
Cool. Well, thank you everyone for your introductions and for making the time. Everyone who's watching, we're actually coming to you from like 5 different time zones. So there are some early mornings and some late nights going on right now. So class of 2009, start us off. Tell us what happened back when you were starting to prepare for placements. When did the recession actually hit? When did you start feeling the pinch when it came to your job search? Can you give us a bit of context?
Sure. Maybe I can take this one. So I think things were looking fine, I would say, when the 7th semester started. So you can imagine like July and August. I think August was the time when we were asked to submit our resumes. I think generally the mood on campus was still pretty upbeat at that time. there were some seniors, who used to still hang out in the campus, who I was close to at that time, and they were giving us some indications that something is happening in the broader market, but most of us didn't understand what those things meant. And then I think one thing I clearly remember is middle of September when Lehman collapsed, and when like one of my senior actually almost lost his job because of that. That's when it started hitting us real that something bad is happening out there in the market, and we might be impacted, but still we were very confident about how placements had gone the year before us, and we thought things will still work out. I think by the time October rolled out, some of our placement nominees were giving us numbers about pre-placement offers, and everybody was talking about how most of the companies are not giving out offers the way they used to in the years before. And then early November, when the shortlist started coming out, somehow the companies had already backed out. Some of the companies had said that we are unsure if you're going to come this year. And there was in general, there was a lot of anxiety on campus. And I think to make matters worse, during our time, this was 2008, we had 2611 happen to us when we were in Mumbai. And some companies who were doubtful, like just backed out after that as well. So I think by the time we were like preparing for placements, which is like second half of November, last week of November, everybody was like, we are pretty screwed. This year, we have no idea what's going to happen. Like all our original plans and dreams about companies were completely thrown out the window, and we were just bracing ourselves for, this is going to be really crazy. And we'll just see how it goes, like one day at a time.
Most of the companies which typically came in the last year did not come in our year. So we had very few finance companies, very few consulting companies who actually came in. Even the core companies which would come in and would take like 10, 15 people every year, like Schlumberger, took only three or four students in our year. So overall, even when the placement started, there was a significant change from last year.
So it sounds like there was a definite substantial change to the jobs that came to campus, the number of positions that were available. But my hope is that eventually every student did find a job, whether through campus placements or off-campus placements. So we'll talk about that, how to go about that in a bit. Can any of you give examples of, you were really hoping for a company or a certain role and you had your expectations pinned on that, but it just didn't go as planned because the company itself canceled? And then how did you manage that?
I can probably take that. When placements were coming, like right in I think November, Sony was taking technical written test and all that, and they were preparing. And Sony was day one slot one company, and I got through all the written, and I was scheduled for on-site on that day. But as 2611 unfolded, they decided not to come, and they later came at a very later date, but that they didn't come in day one slot one. And I was like, hey, this position is in Japan. How do you speak Japanese? And I'm talking to a bunch of campus seniors and people who have been in Japan to like, do I really need to learn Japanese? Is this offer enough to live in Tokyo and whatnot and stuff? And like, and then even apart from Sony, a lot of other companies who are like typically showing up, like Tanmay mentioned, they didn't show up. And then the ones that showed up hired really less people. So it was like a shock. And like after seeing like day 1, 2, 3 go by and like not many people getting placed, and especially you not getting placed, it was very nerve-wracking, and a lot of anxiety kicked in. I eventually get placed in Qualcomm, I think on day 6, but at that time, like in the first, third, fourth day, it was hard to just go in an interview knowing that not companies are coming, you're not getting placed. And then, oh no, what will I do kind of thing. All that fear of unemployment and the negativity kicks in. But eventually you have to get through it. Like it took me a couple of days to recover from that, but eventually on day 6, I got placed, and a lot of my lot of my batchmates faced the same thing, and different people recovered at different time. But like I would say, like at the end of the season, most of our batch had some way or some offer somewhere.
Yeah, I have a similar story to share. So being from chemical engineering, we were mainly waiting for the oil and gas companies like Tanmay mentioned. Schlumberger used to take 15, 20 people in the previous years. So, and they used to take only students from chemi, mech, and electrical. So we were like, okay, a good bunch of us should get placed there. We knew that few of us, I mean, this year they'll take few, but they actually took just one. And and I think I was really excited about that. The interview and all, everything went well. And when they announced the result, they took one, but they also released a wait list and of 2 3 more people, I think. So that's what made the number sound like 4, but I was number 1 on that wait list, so that made it even harder to take it. Like, it's not like you didn't do well so you didn't get the job. So that's similar to, I mean, they did show up, they did take one student, and that one student didn't even take that job eventually. But I also want to add to that it feels like the only way to get into that dream job is through campus placements, but that's not entirely true. I have seen my batchmates land up in other companies that would have been their dream companies at placements. They didn't get into those companies during placements, but they did end up there. And for example, McKinsey, BCG, they used to take like maybe 2 or 3 students from the entire batch, each company. But I know that a lot of our batchmates are working for them now. So, you will get a lot of opportunities later on. It's just the first opportunity, the campus placements. But yeah, that's all.
Can you guys tell us a little bit about how you manage the anxiety, the nerves during that time? We've already, we're 15 minutes in, no, 13 minutes in, and we've already talked a lot about the anxiety. How was it managed? How did you recover from it?
So I think, well, first of all, it's hard for sure. And then if you don't plan for it, it's going to be harder. I think what helped me was this core group of people I used to talk to who would, kind of just tell me and remove me out of the IITB placements bubble and help me understand it's going to be okay. And, these are people, whoever you think you're close to, could be your parents, siblings, close friends, seniors from IIT Bombay. That's one. And I think second is I used to try not to think about what's going to happen. Like, try to keep away the negative thoughts and, like, keep yourselves focused on preparation. And I think that is one thing I would say nobody should ignore. And a lot of us made that mistake of thinking that, we are in IIT Bombay, this is one of the best IITs, and we should get a job, which was borderline entitlement. What a lot of us didn't realize is, we're going to compete within, like, within our batch itself, and you need to be on top of it. You need to constantly brush your skills, be it technical, soft skills, hard skills, whatever the case may be. So I tried to keep myself focused on what is it that I can do for the next company. What is it I can do to get shortlisted? Based on the interviews that I'd bombed, I try to learn from them and make sure that I don't make those mistakes again if I get a next shot at an interview.
I think I would like to add one more thing. So definitely there were very few people getting placed in the first few days. But in your core group, if let's say one of your close friend is already has cracked a job, then it helps actually having someone you can talk to within the group, because they don't have the same anxiety. And actually, let's say you have 3 4 more companies coming next day, at least you can bounce off your thoughts of what makes sense for you, which ones to apply for, rather than just applying for everything, so that you're also a bit clear. And also prepare for that, as Sagar was also saying, because maybe your dream company was different, so your preparation and your mindset is actually tuned towards something else. So just you need to prepare for that along with some of these people, which helps you filter all the discussion happening on the campus.
Yeah, I think I'll
That's
just, yeah, I just remembered one thing. So as Apeksha mentioned, there will of course be people who would get placed on day one and day two. And what happened during my time is, some of them were like really helpful, as everybody knew that this is going to be a hard time. The ones who got placed, they started offering help immediately to others, who were interviewing on day three and after that. And, some of us took advantage of the fact to just make sure that we prepare with them, we do mock interviews with these guys. Some people didn't take vacation even after getting placed. They decided to stay on campus to help some of these other people out. And I think yeah, that was super helpful. And some of you who will get placed in the early days should try and help your classmates.
Yeah.
I think it's also useful to like adopt an attitude of outward pessimism. So because these are extraordinarily difficult times, you're already anxious and there's more competition for the same roles. You may not be as successful in interviews as you used to be. So you may not hit it out of the park. And I think it's fine. Like you should not be too hard on yourself.
Can you guys tell us if you sort of made your contingency plans differently, or how would you suggest you go about making a contingency plan in this kind of situation?
Sure, I can take that. So I think in this situation, it's important to evaluate your risk appetite. So for example, say a year ago, you wanted to work on that ambitious project like autonomous vehicles or something like Magic Leap. This may not be the right time to do that because during a recession, you never know the investors' confidence. And I feel that these projects are the most likely to get shelved. And so so you should evaluate whether you want to take that risk in this situation or not. So for example, when I was applying a couple of months ago, I preferred short-term stability over my quote unquote dream job. So I was applying to a lot of places, like both. So I was mainly applying for software engineering roles. So I was applying for both like software generalist roles as well as niche roles to maximize my chances. But that's something you need to consciously think about. So you don't want to end up in a situation where you are in some risky project and it gets shut down and you're suddenly laid off. So I mean, that might be okay for you, but you need to think about that.
Yeah. I think I would add a couple of things. So in general, at least at our time, what used to happen is everyone would have some kind of jobs they are interested in and they'll prepare just for that. For example, I was only preparing for consulting back then. So it may be wise to actually be a bit more broad, understand that you have a preference, but it may not happen. So keep your perspective a bit broad and have a slightly broader preparation set. Second, if you are not getting jobs, let's say in the first few days on campus placement, start exploring outside as well. And it could mean startups, because not, of course, all startups come to campus. Or even if you are contemplating higher studies, keep that thought, start thinking about that even for now, because your deadlines for submission or application would go up, I think deadlines around November, December, if I remember correctly. So do all of that as your contingency plans. And also, if you still struggle, rather than not having a job, I would suggest take up internships or do something, because it'll still be your first job and there'll be enough to learn wherever you go. So, and then it becomes much easier when you're applying for your second job.
I think I agree with that. And on the lines of higher studies, didn't happen to me, but I know that some of our batchmates didn't have any plans of doing higher studies, but given the situation, then they chose to. And so that once they are done with higher studies, the market will be in a better shape. So, but yeah, if you're anyways planning to do it at some point, maybe now can be a good time to do that.
Yeah, and still, since your deadlines are still out there, you can still apply and keep it ready as a backup, because a lot of our batchmates actually had to drop 1 year, do internships and RA-ships with professors to actually apply for higher studies. Right now, you have the opportunity to apply and keep that as a backup at least. So I would suggest just pursue that option as well.
Yeah. Sorry, just one more thing to add. Do that only if you want to do higher studies. Don't force yourself into it.
Yes.
And
Yeah, I
what?
was going to, sorry, I was just going to say that I think, Nupur, are we losing you?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I think just to build on top of what Apeksha was saying in terms of broadening your options, in hindsight, I think I would have done that better. Like, for example, in the first half of the semester, or I would say right up to the end of the first half of the semester, I was very focused on getting a job which will give me a balance between my technical skill set and slightly non-tech. You can think of companies like Transocean, PNG, like those kind of stuff. And of course, I was trying to recruit for non-tech jobs as well, like consulting and banking. But what I didn't realize is actually I had a decent resume on the tech side of things as well. And I had completely ignored that part. I had, eventually what happened is my internship, which at that time was at Texas Instruments, and some of my projects, like your BTP project, which I think you are done, the first half is done, or even your course projects. Some of them were very appealing to the companies, and I realized that only after like very late in the process. And I think I would, if I would go back, I would have prepared a lot better for some of these tech jobs. I would not have undervalued the technical side of my resume. And I think eventually I ended up getting one job on day 6 or day 7, which was Samsung Bangalore. And then when Sony came back on campus, they shortlisted me. And I was allowed to sit for that because I think it was a tier 1 company. And at that time, Samsung Bangalore was a tier 2 job. And I think the rule was if you had a tier 2 and you get a shot at a tier 1, then you're allowed to sit for that. Otherwise, you're out of the placement system. So then when I went for my interview at Sony, I realized how much they enjoyed talking about my internship, which I said I didn't think it would be a big deal for companies, and that's how I got my job, which I eventually took up. So I would suggest that people start looking at their resume from a broad standpoint, and start thinking from what companies would like in your resume, and don't undervalue. That's one. And second is, I think, preparation. I think it's still mid-September. You have enough time to even brush up your technical skills, or whatever other skills you have built up during your time at IIT Bombay, and you should spend time honing those skills now.
I just want to highlight, a lot of what your tips and suggestions have been so far, for the graduating class right now, they are actually very applicable in general, right? I didn't graduate in the middle of a recession, but it is always a wise plan to have contingency plans. It's always wise to look at your own resume from a fresh pair of eyes. There were several people in my batch who didn't get the jobs that they wanted in the first week, not even through the whole campus placement process, right? But they found a way to course correct over time. So this time round, you're just going to have to be a bit more proactive than maybe other batches have had to be. But please don't feel that you're going to have to do all this extra work just because you're graduating in the middle of a recession. So I also want to make sure that you guys know that other batches have to think about this stuff as well. So don't freak out. No panicking. Cool. Let me move on from this topic. Did any of you have an experience where you got a job that you wanted and then had it canceled or revoked? And how did you navigate through that kind of situation?
Yes, so I had that experience. I'll take that up first. So I got a job with Technip Abu Dhabi, I think in the first few days of the placements. I don't remember exactly which day was it, but it was a very good job. I don't remember the package exactly. It was one of a pretty high package, a pretty good profile. It was one of the dream jobs for most people in chemical. So that was very good. So in December, I decided I was set. I started helping out people and everything. And then in March, they rescinded the offer. At that time, there was no precedence of such things happening. So there was no policy in place of what happens when a company takes back their offer. So we weren't even allowed, if we would be allowed to sit for placements again. So we approached the placement cells. Luckily, they allowed us to sit for placements again. They tried to push the company, but you can only, as an IIT, only has so much power to wield over the companies. They can't do much. So they tried their share, but nothing happened initially. We were allowed to sit for placements again. Then in April, GAIL India Limited, which was a core I mentioned earlier, which was finally the job I joined, they came. I got an offer from there. I took that offer. Eventually, a month or two down the line, Technip again resent their offer. They offered the job back again to us. So there were about 5 of us in that boat. They resent their offer to all 5 of us with the same pay scale and everything. And then some of us decided to go with the other jobs we had. Some of us decided to stick to the Technip job offer. I have a very close friend who was exactly in the same boat, who got the Technip job offer and then the GAIL job offer. I decided to go with GAIL. He decided to go with Technip. Neither of us have any regrets. So I'm sure it works out in the end.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Tanmay. I have a similar experience. So this was not during my time at IIT Bombay. So I started my master's program at Georgia Tech in 2018, and I did a summer internship at Uber ATG in the summer of 2019. So this was after the first year of my MS program. And so just so you know, ATG is the self-driving car division of Uber. And I was really happy with the internship. I had an amazing experience. And I received a full-time offer from them after the internship. So I accepted the offer in December last year. And in March this year, the pandemic devastated the world. And so on the day I graduated, I get a call from Uber saying that your offer is being rescinded. So it was disappointing. And but I also had a gut feeling that this would happen because a week ago, Lyft had laid off a bunch of people because of the pandemic. And so my mind was kind of subconsciously preparing for this eventuality. But nevertheless, I was still disappointed. Like I was really looking forward to the job. And I did not have time to mourn the loss because I am on a visa and I just had 90 days to find another job. So the next day I started applying. And so a tip to those who are not going through campus placements is actively seek out for referrals. So these can be your friends or your seniors or like second degree connections on LinkedIn. I found that referrals help you a lot in getting interviews. Like they'll just bump you to the top of the applicant queue. So this was my experience.
Just a question on that, Niranjan. Do you think this referrals point is more of a US specific thing, given that I think most of campus placements are for jobs in India, or do you think it applies in India as well, where the volume to opportunities ratio is a bit different?
Yeah, I think at least for tech companies, it's relevant in India as well. I know a few people who got jobs through that route.
Even for non-tech companies, I know for a fact that in Accenture, if you apply through a referral, chances of your resume being looked at and evaluated are much higher than at other places, than if you apply through any job portal. So the referral jobs are looked at first and then the job portal applications.
Yeah, from my lateral, not for campus higher positions. So I think we should distinguish a bit between the two.
Yeah, from my experience in Tech USA, I don't think you get a call back if it's not through referral, if it's just online submission, but you almost definitely get a call back if it's through a referral. So it makes a huge difference, at least here.
Yeah, even in tech India, like when I was at Amazon in India, a lot of like 1 year, sometimes the big companies will say for campus, like if you are like fresh grad, they will not do referrals per se, but you can still talk to the hiring manager as a referral. Like if you have a contact that they can like kind of take you from the pool. And like a lot of like, I had a couple of cases where I got my friends bumped up into and at least got them an interview. So referrals do help both in India and the US. So seek out.
Okay. So now that we're already kind of touching on the subject, like we all have been through IIT Bombay placements and we all know what the rules, do's and don'ts were back then, and also the rules around off-campus placements. So let's talk a bit about, so let's say campus placements doesn't work out for a student and you have to start looking on your own outside. What are some tips and tricks on how to do that? We already talked about referrals. What are some of the avenues that one can use, and how do you make sure that you're, making sure to stand out, but also not annoying the people that you're reaching out to or overstepping any professional boundaries in trying to get interviews? And it would be helpful, I think, if we can try to focus the discussion a bit more on India job market, or job markets that are accessible for Indian students from a visa point of view straight out of college, which Europe is one, so I can talk about that. Okay, so
from when we were talking of referrals, I would say don't treat it like you treat your application for internships abroad. Don't send blanket invites to all alums. You look for opportunities in the companies you want to apply to, find the right opportunity, then find alums in those companies, and then approach those alums, giving your profile, giving your introduction, and asking them that if they could refer you for that particular position. If you approach alums with a specific request, they are more likely to respond than generally connecting with 100 alums, which you won't know after that what to do with them. So my suggestion is just first look for opportunities and then apply, then connect with the alums, right alums.
Yeah, I think I can give a view from the other side of the table. Like, for example, this year, because of the recession, a lot of, and Amazon is one of the few companies which is still hiring. So we get a lot of random requests on LinkedIn, either just for connections or anything like that. But some of them do stand out, and that increases the chance of getting a response or some sort of response. So I would like to talk a little bit about LinkedIn, but how to use it properly. Like as Tanmay was mentioning, I think randomly sending out requests to a bunch of people is not going to help you at all. What you should rather do, or what I would have done in the same situation is, first try to figure out when you're trying to go off campus, which companies are hiring, and use LinkedIn to find out, is there any contact in that company in your network or your sub networks who's already there. And then once you learn to use how to use LinkedIn search better, I've realized that there's a lot more functionality in that which most people don't use. Once you have that content identified, try and draft either a letter or a message which is detailed or not blanket, and which will elicit some sort of a response. Even if that person is not hiring or doesn't know, that person will try to help you if your request itself is genuine and if your interest is genuine in that company. As you know, during these times, like very few people will be hiring, and you have to make sure that you stand out in the bunch of applications that these people will be getting. And then you can start building connections in the company, try to find the right contact, get in touch with the right people, and then hopefully you will make it to the interview stage. After that, it's purely your skills and talent and how you present yourself. But realize that, as Tanmay said, if you just send out blanket emails, requests on LinkedIn, or things like that, it will just not work out at all. And on top of it, it will add to anxiety, because you will keep thinking, I'm doing XYZ, I'm doing so much, I'm not getting anything. I'm not seeing any positive come out of it, which is a false expectation, because you need to tailor your approach. You need to be specific. You need to customize your request.
I want to add to that. So yes, fully agree with all the guidelines that you gave on LinkedIn, which is indeed a very powerful tool. I also feel that back when I was a student, my worldview of what jobs are out there was very limited to the big companies that came to campus and all the companies that students considered prestigious. But after campus, I realized that the world is so much bigger and there are so many companies. And especially in a place like India, you have so many startups doing super cool things for this, super unique population of 1 billion people. From sitting over here in Europe, people are always talking about the India growth story and how exciting it is. And a lot of these companies do not come to campus, right? So you also need to try to find ways to know who they are and then find out what they're working on. But oftentimes, or whether they're looking for recruiting. But oftentimes we don't even do the first step of what are these companies. So be curious on LinkedIn. There are fantastic online communities where you can just join and learn a bit more about what companies are doing. For example, follow startup accelerator programs so that you can see what different startups are working on. There's a really great Facebook community called Network Capital that has around 65,000 professionals in India, from social impact to agriculture to consulting, everywhere. And this is a good place where I get exposure to different kinds of jobs, and people will often post over there for internships and job openings. So there is a really big world out there that we don't even see when we're in campus. So don't forget about that.
Yeah, adding to what Nupur said about companies which don't come for placements, I think there are crowdsourced lists now of companies actively hiring during the pandemic. Maybe we can find that list out and link them in the description after the live stream.
Yes. One other tip that I want to add is, because of the pandemic and because everything needs to now go virtual, a lot of conferences are going virtual. They're also reducing their costs, so it's much easier for students to participate because people don't have cost of running these things anymore. So they're basically just opening them up to a wider community. So also keep an eye out for that. This is where you will learn a lot as well and meet a lot of interesting people. So yeah, get creative about how you're educating yourself on what's going on around you. Cool. So moving on, I guess the big fear that would be on everyone's mind is, what if I'm the one who ends up without a job and I have to go through a period of unemployment? How do you manage that, both from a kind of psychological, personal point of view, and also how do you make sure that you're growing even during that kind of period and doing the best for your career in a period of unemployment?
Yeah, I can take that. I think I was unemployed for about 6 months last year. It wasn't right after any kind of campus placements, but it was after working in a company for over 5 years. And I mean, even knowing that, there are frequent layoffs that happen in my org, maybe couple of times a year, I was in a comfortable position then. I was not expecting it. So definitely took me by surprise. And I think one thing I would suggest, maybe that's not valid for new grads, but maybe sometime in future they may find it useful, is to keep track of what projects you're working on, what achievements, milestones you are getting. Because if you don't update, if you are comfortable in a job for long enough, you don't feel like updating your resume frequently. And then once you are in that situation, it's hard to remember all the things you did in that last 5 years. So I think main thing that helped me in that phase was to be able to just relax, take a step back, not rush into anything, and take your own time to just figure out things, do a market survey, and form a application strategy. I think that is something that we don't usually give a lot of importance to, especially since I was in US on visa, and same story as Niranjan, that you have a timeline, you have a deadline before you have to find a new job. But even then, I think I took about 2 weeks to just talk to people, talk to my friends in different professions, different companies, to just get ideas of all the opportunities that are out there, and working on my resume, LinkedIn profile, etc. And then I think forming an application strategy is important too. Like, for example, you may have some tier 1 companies in your priority list. Like, these are my top choices, and then some can be second choices, tier 2 companies or tier 3 companies. Then sometimes I've seen people just rush into applying at all the tier 1 companies at once. And then what happens is, if they were not ready for that interview process at that time, they have consumed all of their options at that attempt. And on the other extreme, I've also seen people just apply to tier 2 thinking that I'm not ready for tier 1 yet, let me get some practice first. And I mean, with the job loss or with unemployment, sometimes we lack confidence in ourselves too. Like, we tend to think that something is missing, something is wrong with me, that's why I'm in this situation, so I'm not ready for those dream jobs of mine, so let me try to lower my expectations and just apply to tier 2 companies first. But then in those situations, what happens is they get an offer from tier 2, like their second choice, and they have never even given a try at the first choice, so they end up accepting that. That's not ideal as well. What I did also was a calculated risk. In that sense, I had like 4 or 5 companies in my first choice, so I kept a couple of them for round 2. Like, if I don't get into any of these in my first attempt, I'll apply to those after gaining feedback or after preparing a bit more. So from that, I what happened was, okay, I did get into the companies where I applied first, and some of those were my first choices, so that was okay. But I didn't even get to give a try at the rest of the companies that I kept for later. So those are the kind of calculated risks you may have to take. So I think it's worth spending some time just thinking about how you want to approach, what are your goals, and also important to talk to a lot of people. Maybe 10% of them will give you something useful. I mean, not everyone I talked to said something that I found helpful, but you just need to take what's useful and work with that. But I think talking to a lot of people in different streams helped me make a clear picture in my head of what I wanted to do. So yeah, I mean, for the first 2 months, I was just focused on my interview preparation, and I think I was lucky to be able to have that focus on studying and preparations. And once I got accepted the offer, there was another 4 months that I was unemployed because of visa transfer issues. So in people in India won't have to face that. So I mean, I would just say take that time also in a positive way, so that in a way, like, this is the time I'm getting to actually spend time on exercising or relax a little, out of that churn that we go through on day-to-day basis. So yeah.
I would like to add a small tip here in case you're going off campus. You might want to schedule the interviews of the companies you desire the most after the interviews of other companies, because if you're interviewing after a long time, you are rusty, there are some nerves. So you can get those out of the way during interviews of companies you are not that interested in, so that you are adequately prepared for companies which you are really interested in.
Yeah, actually, that's a good point. And I think mock interviews also help a lot. For tech, especially, like if you're interested in those roles, then there are some websites, like I used interviewing.io. There are, I'm sure, other portals too, where real people who are working in those jobs volunteer to interview you anonymously. So you don't know them, they don't know you, but you get to experience that exact interview format. And I think I definitely learned a lot from it, because the first mock interview I did, I completely bombed it. So I was lucky that it wasn't a real interview.
That's good to know. Just to add on to that, so I actually left McKinsey last year in October, and I did have like a bit of a kind of burnout at work, if I'm being fully honest. And one thing, I was still thinking about what I want to do next. Obviously, it was not related to the recession or anything, and I was meeting quite a lot of people, talking about my job search. But I found that I don't have the energy to continue those conversations, or actually go from just having an initial conversation to the interview stage, because although they were willing to give me the interview, I was still sort of recovering from my burnout. So the analogy I'm trying to make is, if you find yourself in a period of unemployment that was unexpected, and there is some emotional recoil that you have because of it, you probably want to also manage that, deal with that, because it will show in an interview and in the interview process if you are not giving it your 100% momentum that the company or the interviewer would expect to see. So I actually put a pause on my job search and then took a few months to figure out what I wanted to do. So yeah. So we have 15, well, we don't really have a hard stop, but around 15 minutes left. And I'm starting to get some questions from the students. One interesting question that is also tied to a question, the last question on our list, is basically, how did the recession affect your career longer term? Do you feel that graduating in a recession had some long-standing effects? And actually, the specific question that somebody has asked is, did it mean that your career went down so much that your juniors actually got an unfair advantage over you?
So I can take this question. I really feel that like I can talk about my own personal experience. So for example, at campus, I was looking for consulting jobs, and as all of you know, it would be really scarce. So I didn't get my dream jobs on campus. Even a year later, when the market improved, with maybe working with a tier 2 company, finding, let's say, going back to the dream job was not really feasible, because they were not looking for lateral hire with 1 year experience at that point. So eventually for me, I decided that if I still want to go into consulting, I may have to do MBA and then course correct from there. That meant maybe, I think, practically a year or two in terms of where I could have been. But frankly, I don't think it's really a long-term career impact, because from a long-term career perspective, that doesn't mean much. Plus, whatever I did in the pre-MBA time, like 3 years before my MBA, came in quite handy as in terms of my own learning over my course of career in BCG. And I have also seen that different people, like, or different friends of mine, took different course, but it also gave them an opportunity to explore what they can do before actually going after one name or a one particular job which they were thinking about during campus. Because frankly, whatever you think about a job during campus, it may be very different from that, because it's a very outside in view. So most of the people were able to course correct and make it work. I actually don't know many people who actually had a long-term impact.
Yeah, I think
Another
I
thing,
can.
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I can totally second that. So let's get this actually very, very clear to all the students. I don't think there is going to be any long-term impact on anyone's career. So nobody should, worry about that. And yeah, don't be overly stressed or anxious about that. I think, first of all, you need to realize your career is a marathon. It's not a sprint. There's a lot of time ahead of you, and you will get multiple opportunities to course correct. Uh, either in terms of changing jobs 1 or 2 years down the line, or doing a second master's. You don't necessarily have to do an MBA. If you want to an MBA, you can go ahead with that as well, but you can do other masters. I don't know if there is just still this notion on campus that if you have to do a master's in a technical field, it has to happen immediately after your undergrad. That's not true. In fact, you might actually be in a better position to get some sort of a real world experience, so that you can understand what is it that you really want to go deeper into in terms of a technical or a non-technical field. And this is, I think this is true more so for the ones who are thinking of doing an MBA. I remember when I was on campus, I was sitting in one of the pre-placement PPTs, pre-placement talks that a company was offering, and this was probably one of the consulting companies, and they hire a bunch of MBAs, both from India and abroad. And one of the students asked the question, if I have to do an MBA, would you recommend? And this person, had done an MBA immediately after undergrad, the one who was answering the question. So the question that was asked is, would you recommend if I do an MBA immediately after graduating from IIT Bombay, or would you recommend that I wait, gather some real world experience and then go to an MBA? And his answer was like so clear in one sentence, sense that he said, if I had to do it, I would never do an MBA immediately after undergrad. mostly because you don't know anything about businesses. Once you go directly to do an MBA, and it's so much more helpful if you have some little more real world experience, be it 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, or even on the higher side, 5 or 7 years. But if you really are thinking of doing an MBA, it's so much better to get some experience and then go do that. And on the other hand, right, on the technical side of things, also I've seen so many people. This was at least not true during my time, but over the last 10 years, I've seen so many people go for a master's degree after spending a couple of years in the job market, trying to at least have some real life experience, trying to understand what are the technologies they will be interested in. Even on the technical side, there are so many new degrees which have opened up in the last 5 years, which was not true during my time. So I would encourage people to look into that as well. And as I said, I did not, in hindsight, I know that nobody got impacted over the long term. Everybody was able to do what they wanted to do 5 or 6 years down the line.
Yeah, and
and
it's not a rat race that you compare yourself with your juniors or seniors or anybody. It's your own path. You decide what you want to do and go ahead. And definitely having experience, whatever experience you have, you do learn something or the other from that, and that cannot be replaced by uh, anything else. So you, for example, I did 5 years in Gale, and after that I joined consulting. Every conversation I had in consulting after that, my previous experience from my job, which had nothing to do with consulting, came in. It was much more useful than the education I did in IIT or my MBA. So every experience you have will add a lot of value to your to you as a person, and it will definitely help in your career.
Yeah, I second that because I had exactly same experience when I was working on my job hunt last year. I decided to apply for software roles, and I thought I'm starting from scratch because I thought even though my position earlier was software engineer on paper, it was very different industry from the industry that I was planning to go into. But when I actually was interviewing, I realized how much that unique experience that I got, that I felt that I'm trapped in this niche area, but how much that was valued by other companies because that's a unique experience of building software for a manufacturing site. So it comes with unique challenges, and then interviewers are really interested in talking about that. So whatever end up doing, you are gaining some experience, and that will definitely add to your profile, and it's your unique path. Yeah, adding to just what everybody else said.
Yeah.
The one thing I would like to add there is like, yes, like I don't feel that there's any long-term impact per se. Like when I was interviewing at campus, I chose a really good company, but it was like Qualcomm, which is like more hardware and more like telecom than software per se. Uh, but I personally didn't like course correct soon enough. Like I waited for a couple of years. But if you want to if you are aiming for a dream company and if you want to go in a particular industry, in my case, I wanted to go in like hardcore software, like pure software companies, then look out for opportunities. Don't be passively sitting in something that you are good, but like not like, okay, I don't want to do this, but it's fine because the company is good and the job is okay. I got into that like comfort zone per se for 2 years, and it was an external trigger that made me move, and not by like, okay, I should be actively looking for something. If I had to redo it again, I would say I would have been like better off after a year, like looking for opportunities that I didn't do. But if you are going for a like, okay, I need to broaden my search and go to the companies and industries that I probably wouldn't have gone had there not been a recession or a pandemic, then look out for the right opportunity once you kind of get in. Don't get into a comfort zone. That's what I would say based on my experiences. Um, yeah.
So I think I would just like I would like to add one thing. There was this thing I totally underestimated when I was in campus, and looking back, like both at my own career and careers of my peers, I have realized we don't think that much. During our time at IIT Bombay, and especially during placement season, we don't understand the impact of our first job less in terms of how your career is going to pan out, but more in terms of how your thinking and your personality will be shaped because of your exposure to particular industry. Like for example, as I said, in the beginning, I was very focused on non-tech career options and consulting and banking without really thinking if I my personality is actually suited for that kind of a job. And I think Apeksha made a point earlier. People on campus have a very outsider's view on what it means to work for these companies, and some of them are glamorized or overly glamorized, and people actually don't understand if you really are going to enjoy these roles. And I think uh, before people start looking at companies and started applying, they should just take a step back and think, is there anything I would like to explore? Like for example, some of the people I speak to who jumped into these jobs later on said that I wish I would had given a shot at a technical job or technical role. I wish I had spent some time learning some more technical skills, especially in today's world, which is so much software dominated. Like I even at a company like Amazon, some of the VPs and SVPs that I've spoken to, they say that if I have to go back, I would learn software and then, and then get into a management role or position, at least to understand how these things work. And what I realized is during that time, we never paid any attention to these things. So I would encourage students before jumping into any industry, just take a step back and think if this is something which is going to make you happy personally, if this is something which appeals to your personality, and don't underestimate the impact of of that first job.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And generally, I think, given where the question started, that you guys feel that your careers just, tanked as a result of graduating in a recession. I think the answer is very loud and clear no. And even if you don't get what you want in the beginning, you will find a way. There are so many ways to get to it eventually. And who knows, you might even change your mind about what you wanted. It may not actually be what you wanted. So I'm going to move on to the questions that we have been getting from the group. Okay. So if you are going for off-campus jobs, are there any compromises that you have to make on pay or position or benefits versus going through campus jobs? Is there a reason that that would be different? My hypothesis is no, because I can't imagine why it would be different. A position that has to be filled is a position that has to be filled. So
yeah, again, I think I can give a view from the other side of the table. Like for example, when Amazon looks at resumes, whether it's people coming through the campus route or the off-campus route, I don't think there's any difference in the pay or the benefits that you get. In fact, I have heard the opposite view that sometimes companies have a very standard offer that they give to students who come through the university hiring pipeline, and there's no room for negotiation if you want to negotiate. But if you get hired through an off-campus process, then they don't treat you as a university hire, and then if you have multiple offers, then you can utilize that to negotiate your way up, basically. So yeah, that's what I have seen in this market.
I agree. I think that's a good point. So if you're looking for off-campus jobs, definitely do not take an offer as it comes. You need to negotiate because it's not a campus placement team who have already maybe done some discussion, or maybe there is a prior, or the pay scale from last year. This is an uncharted territory, so you need to figure out just beyond the simple pay scale number that you give, what are the other benefits included, not included, and ensure you get a fair offer there. So yeah, I think that's the only other point, but otherwise there shouldn't be a difference.
Yeah. I just want to add one more point to this negotiation thing. If you are applying and apply to multiple companies at once, so that even if you don't intend to join them, because it helps to have a competing offer if you're applying off campus, like Sagar said, like in negotiation. Also doing a lot of market research. There are some websites that post pretty accurate salary data on different roles and companies. So do a lot of market research, and then you can actually get pretty good offers through externally applying.
One more point. So you might want to schedule your interview such that you get multiple offers within the span of a week so that you can negotiate. Like if you get an offer 2 weeks after the first offer, maybe you'll have to decide on the first offer and then the second offer kind of goes to waste.
Yeah, that's something that's hard to do sometimes, and like you have to like really think through. You have to really plan ahead of it, because some companies are very slow, notoriously slow in giving you offers, and some are extremely fast. I've seen that Amazon give an offer in a week. Like you interview, and like 2-3 days after the interview, you have an offer right there. And Google takes like 6 months, sometimes 3 months to actually give you an offer. So if you're offering like different variety of companies, you have to think through of which one I should interview before, so that offers land around the same time.
Yeah, I think it's a lot of planning. There are too many unknowns, but yeah, if you can, then why not?
And the pandemic has actually like expanded hiring timelines. So hiring is slow. So you might want to get data on what the current timeline looks like for each company before scheduling the interviews.
So to sum up on that question, there will be negotiation power if you are going off campus. Well, there should be negotiation power if you're going off campus, but you will be a bit more in charge of your sort of entire interviewing process, and you will have to figure out with each company what their processes are, what their timelines are. I think a tip from my side is to not necessarily believe every company when it tells you their timeline, because on the inside their situation might be changing or different. So if someone says, oh, we'll tell you in 2 weeks, don't cancel all your other interviews and assume that they will indeed tell you in 2 weeks. Be smart about how you're going about that. Next question. So I think these two are potentially a bit tough for this group to answer, but let's give it a go. One is, what was the average placement percentage for your batch? And do you think for this year it could be something similar to that? So that's question one around statistics. Question two around statistics is, do you have any idea if the recession affected undergrad and PG students similarly or differently?
So I think I definitely don't have the numbers top of my head, so don't quote me on this anywhere. But like percentage of students placed, I think by the end of my 8th semester, I think it was still probably pretty high. Like for example, and what I mean by that is I don't know too many people around me who didn't have any job. But I'm talking about like May and June. I know people who are still recruiting in May and June, which is pretty much the end of your last semester, and some of them after that as well. But I don't know, ballpark could be 80, 85, 90%, as I said. So most of the people around me had a job. Very few were still looking, negotiating, dealing with, as Tanmay mentioned, offers that had been canceled. And for the UG PG thing, my understanding based on my interaction with PGs was the impact was similar. I don't think there was any big difference. The only very specific thing I can mention is the most of the at least at that time, the most of the non-core companies would not open themselves up for PG hiring on campus. But I think apart from that, everything was same, and maybe things have changed since then. So I don't know about that. Maybe it's open to all now.
Yeah, I think
on the statistics, what I remember was in chemical, around 10 out of the 60 of the BTech batch did not have like a proper job offer. They took up internships with a few of our professors who offered them. But that was somewhere around May or June. But by around August, September, most of everybody had something or the other in hand.
Yeah. For example, Meta also, I don't have numbers, but I think it was similar to what Tanmay was saying for chemical. So we had few people only left out by then. Yeah.
So touching back on a previous point that was discussed about sort of expanding your job search. So the question is, do you feel that students who are mainly focusing on non-tech jobs need to also start building up coding skills, given that beggars cannot be choosers? I quote, given that beggars cannot be choosers in the recession.
So I think it goes back to our discussion about like just broadening your options and having a contingency plan. So I I would say this is less about, you not being able to get the banking / consulting job, but this is more about, are you willing to, broaden your skill set and, try something else. Um, and even generally speaking, I think like in today's world when, like kids and everybody is just trying to understand how this works, I would say, don't shy away from it. And don't, I would also say, don't let your time at IIT Bombay define your take on technology for the rest of your life. I don't think that's the right way to do it at all. I know so many of us who came in so excited about learning about engineering and technology and just got interested in a bunch of other things at IIT Bombay. But that doesn't mean that you don't have the aptitude for those things. In fact, it doesn't mean that at all. I would I would encourage for you to, just think about what are the, how the world is moving in the future. What are the things that you will need? Even if you end up joining one of those consulting banking roles, you don't know if you're going to do that for the rest of your lives. As Apeksha said, some of those things you might not like for after like 1 year or 2 years, and you might want to get back into something else. So from that standpoint as well, I would recommend people to just start looking at those things. And as I said, just start picking up the basics. So just doing tutorials. There are courses online. I'm sure there is something that IIT Bombay has for you guys to take a look into. So from that standpoint, I would encourage people to just train yourself, just build your skill sets.
I think personally, I would say that maybe spend some time exploring things, different things, whatever you feel like, coding or any other kind of skills that you haven't explored yet. But keep a deadline for that so that you know where to focus your most of your efforts on after that point. Because especially like if you're talking about coding or software jobs, I think it takes some amount of focus to prepare for those interviews. It's not like, I mean, if you learn a little bit about everything, you may not succeed at any of them. So maybe keep some time for exploring, and then more time to just focus on those skills.
Yeah, I
And
think,
I don't
yeah.
think it's mandatory to have all of these things are good to have. It's not a must have. You ultimately need to assess your own aptitude, and if you feel that you cannot at all code, although I don't think most people at IIT would have that problem, but there are some people who uh, they don't have an aptitude for coding, but it's okay. You can do other things. There are other things you can build your alternate skill sets on. It is definitely, in today's world, it is a very good skill to have. And like Sagar said, don't get clouded by what you have experienced in IIT. I'm sure most of you, with some level of effort, can learn pretty basic coding, because nowadays coding is not what it used to be in C, C++. It's almost like talking in English. So if you can learn talking in English, you can probably learn coding as well, but it's not a must have, it's a good to have.
Oh yeah. I would like to say that yeah, it is definitely doable no matter what department you are from. You don't have to be a CS or EC person to explore that option. If you feel like it's something that you're liking, then definitely give it a shot, because you absolutely can do it if you put your mind to it.
I think there are also like roles at the boundary of core and non-core, such as business analyst, where you don't need that kind of focused preparation which you need for software engineering interviews. So with a bit of technical skills and some business knowledge, you can get into such roles. So that's something you might want to explore.
Yeah, I was about to say, like at college, the world was divided into tech and non-tech, and the rest of the world is not divided into just those two categories. So there's so much more when it comes to, if you say you're not necessarily focusing on non-tech anymore, it doesn't mean that you now have to become a coder, right? There's a lot of stuff in between that it's at the intersection of business and tech. And even if you are in tech, you still don't have to code. You can do, strategy for Tesla, which is a kind of tech company, or there's health tech now, fintech, edutech. So yeah, just make sure that you're not limiting your perspectives to two very narrow categories.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the other thing I want students to know, I'm not sure if this information is already trickled on campus, but as Nupur, you're just talking about, the division between tech and non-tech was very binary and clear at IIT Bombay, at least during my time. I think over the years I've realized that there are multiple things in between which you can pick up based on your affinity to being technical. Like for example, in today's world, like a lot of like business school students take up product program roles at tech companies. These are actually non-tech roles. Like I would define them as non-tech roles, but having a little bit of understanding of coding or technology or software just helps. It's an added benefit. But if I would enter the ones who are looking to take up non-tech or non-core jobs, I would encourage that you guys have a conversation with a placement nominee and see if, like, these companies like Amazon or Google or Microsoft are willing to hire from campus for some of these roles, which I said actually are by definition are non-tech roles, these product program operation strategy roles. And because on campus at that time, these companies used to come only for software roles, which is purely tech. But as I said, there are multiple roles which exist at these companies. And it would be great if companies can come to campus with these roles as well for entry-level position.
Cool. So the next question, and potentially the last question, is do you guys think that freelancing is a good idea, a good option?
I would take that. I think there's no harm in freelancing as an option. But personally, I would think in the beginning of your career, you may want to be, if you're starting something that's different, but otherwise, it's good to be in a job where you can actually pick up and learn from other people around you as well. Because otherwise, you may be limiting what you can learn from others. No harm, but yeah, probably try to do something where you can actually have a broader set of people to pick up your skills from.
And you also won't have a steady source of income while freelancing. So that's something like you want to prepare for mentally.
So I've actually been trying to do a little bit of freelancing this year, so I can talk a bit about my experience. I think if you have the opportunity of getting a job, I think that would be a better call, because you're at the beginning of your career and it's really important to have mentorship and coaching around you. However, if there's something that you feel that you're very passionate about, you're already good at, and you're probably not finding a good fit with the job search situation, I think freelancing can actually be a good idea. I do know some people in India who have been freelancing quite early in their careers as well. Of course, it comes with the challenges of not necessarily having a steady income, but that is if you do it well, it can actually be managed, because a lot of companies, especially startups, they prefer freelancers exactly because it's a very flexible job setup. So it can give you also the kind of flexibility needed to job search simultaneously, to interview simultaneously, etc. You just have to sort of figure out the whole administrative and legal situation, because a company is not going to be doing that for you. So it really depends what your context is. I do think that if you're going through a period of transition or unemployment, or don't really know what the next step is for you, whether you do freelancing or find an internship with some company, or go back to a professor on campus and say, hey, can I just do a project with you for 2-3 months? All of those are really good options. You just have to make sure that you're always moving forward, right? Like even talking to people, getting their perspectives, talking about their jobs, telling them that you're available, you're looking, even that is moving forward. So it doesn't matter which path you choose, as long as you're always taking the opportunities and thinking proactively to develop yourself further. Cool. So does anybody have any closing remarks? I think that was our last question. And yeah, anybody wants to share anything? Any
Yeah, I
advice?
can just quickly wrap it up. I would just say, like, don't worry too much, don't stress too much. It's going to work out fine. You guys will do fine. Just don't overthink. Just be focused on preparing, getting a job that you think you will like in the future. Don't pay too much attention to these numbers which come in the Indian media. about expectations from IIT students. Just try to focus on your skill set and taking a first step towards a career which is going to be a very, very long process.
Cool. Well, class of 2020, well, 2021. Good luck. Our wishes are with you. And yeah, we'll see you on the other side.
Yeah, definitely. All the best, guys.
All the
Best of luck.
All the
Good
best.
luck. Bye.
Good luck, guys.